What's up, everybody? Welcome to RealGM Radio. Well, the Giannis trade noise is back. I'm going to talk about how we got here, what the Bucks should look for if they are forced to trade him, and then I'll put together some fake trades. Let's jump in. So you've seen the reporting by now that Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis's representation are having discussions about whether or not Giannis is going to seek a trade before the end of this season. And so we know how we got here. The Bucks aren't very good. They lost to the Wizards on Monday night. Got a nice win over the Pistons Wednesday night, but that was after Giannis injured himself 5 minutes into the game, non-contact injury, goes to the floor. They call it a calf strain, even though at the time some people were throwing around the A word a little bit, very worrisome. Doc Rivers, after the game, ruled out that it was an Achilles injury, but we should get some more information after an MRI within the coming hours or pretty soon here. By the time you're hearing this, maybe we already know. But I don't think that the injury is going to dramatically change anything unless it's unless it's a lot more serious than the Bucks were letting on after the game on Wednesday night. So I want to cover a bunch of stuff, but we've been talking about the Giannis trade idea for, it feels like, years. And every time we kind of go down this road, the Milwaukee Bucks do something and Giannis will say something or do something or sign an extension, and then it goes away. And this is the first time where it really feels like we've gotten to a point of, yeah, it feels like we're probably at a crossroads here. And this is, to me, at least the first time where if you asked me, hey, 50-50, like, what do you think? Is Giannis on the Milwaukee Bucks to start next season or not? I'm at the point now where I think probably not. And it's not to say that this thing can't be salvaged still, but this is also the first time where we've heard this in the middle of a year, right? This usually is an offseason type of conversation, and when it's leading up to an extension. This is the first time it's happened in the middle of a season, and it's the first time a Bucks team has been this bad. It's the worst start for the Milwaukee Bucks in 10 years. And I think for Giannis, who has consistently said two things. He wants to be a Buck for life. Said that for a long time. He doesn't really say it that much anymore. What he really says now is he wants to be contending for a championship every season. And for a while, those two things were the same. The Milwaukee Bucks are always a championship contender. Now they are clearly not. And we'll get to how we got here in a second. But I want to start with, if the Milwaukee Bucks are forced to trade Giannis, what that could look like in terms of a franchise reset. So I looked at the last sort of in their prime star trade packages. And the two things that came to mind, the two trades that came to mind were the Donovan Mitchell trade and the Paul George trade. So the Utah Jazz got for Donovan Mitchell, Larry Markkinen, Colin Sexton, Ochai Agbaji, 3 unprotected first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps. Okay, that was a big haul for the Jazz to trade Donovan Mitchell. And then you've got the Clippers trade for Paul George, which is a little bit more noisy because, right, it was a package deal with Kawhi, but okay, let's just say that it was a package deal for Kawhi. That's fine. The Clippers basically send Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, 5 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps to the Thunder for Paul George / Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So the reason why I'm okay with saying, okay, just call it for Kawhi, is Giannis is closer to Kawhi at that point than he is to what Paul George was at that point. And he's certainly better than what Donovan Mitchell was at that point coming away from Utah. Giannis is a consensus top 3 player. We haven't seen a player, even with the Donovan Mitchell trade, Paul George trade / Kawhi Leonard trade, we haven't seen a player like this potentially hit the trade market in a very long time. Even the last couple Kevin Durant trades don't quite measure up to this. And when you look at those two trades, the Donovan Mitchell trade and the Paul George trade, it essentially boils down to a promising young player, whether it's SGA or Larry Markkinen, at least one more good player, Colin Sexton or Danilo Gallinari, and then 5 to 7 first-round pick assets, whether those are unprotected picks, somewhat protected picks, or swaps. That is the starting point if I'm the Milwaukee Bucks. I am asking for that and maybe more. Now, that's, again, the starting point if I'm Milwaukee. If I'm trading Giannis, it's going to hurt. He is, you ask Bucks fans, you ask just Wisconsin sports fans, he might be the most beloved athlete in Wisconsin sports history. Over guys like Rodgers, over guys like Brett Favre, over anybody else who's put on a Milwaukee Bucks uniform. He might be the most beloved. And certainly the most beloved for a certain generation. Trading him is going to be hard. It's why they've tried not to do it for so long. Also, that because Giannis is awesome, and you don't trade awesome players if you can help it. And by the way, they won't trade Giannis unless he specifically asks for it. And so that's the next step here. If Giannis looks around and says, "You're right, you know what? It's time for me to go," then it's going to be up to Giannis and the Bucks to put together a list of preferred destinations. That would be the next step. Now, the Bucks will want to send Giannis somewhere that he wants to play. He's extension eligible this summer, so that part of this matters, right? And then once that list is put together, the Bucks front office is going to work the phones and try to get the best deal possible. So I was going through the league and I was trying to think, okay, here are the teams that I suspect will definitely be on the list. All right, then there's some dark horse ones that I'll get to here in a second. But in terms of the teams that will definitely be on the list, the New York Knicks are on the top of it. We already know, based on some reporting from Brian Windhorst and others, that Giannis did nudge Milwaukee to perhaps have some conversations with the Knicks about potential Giannis trades over the summer. That obviously didn't go down a very lengthy path, didn't come to fruition, obviously. So we didn't get there. But we at least now know that Giannis has an affinity for New York and for playing for the Knicks. So that comes with some significant hurdles because of where the Knicks are away from the second apron. They're about $150,000 away from the second apron. Now, there are ways that they could put trades together. I got some fake trades that we'll get to here in a second. But that's the starting point of a list of preferred destinations. But as Giannis's former teammate, Damian Lillard, knows, you can't just have the one team on the list. You got to have multiple teams on the list. So the New York Knicks on and probably at the very top of this list of preferred destinations. Then I think Chicago could be on that list. First of all, very large Greek population in the city of Chicago. I think that there's some familiarity with the organization. Obviously, they're in the same division, and just regionally, I think that you could have a lot of Bucks fans perhaps just become Bulls fans, or at least make that drive to go watch him play in Chicago. I don't know. And also, you have all the history with the Chicago Bulls, plus the way that they're playing, big city, all that stuff. I think that helps Giannis's case. I look at Miami. Miami's just one of those teams that is always on the list, on these kinds of lists. Players like to play in Miami. It's an international city. And then you've got the track record of the franchise maximizing star players that come here, whether it's LeBron James or even you could argue Jimmy Butler never won a championship, but they made 2 NBA finals, and I don't think anybody expected that when Jimmy Butler signed in Miami in 2019. Then you have the coach, Eric Spoelstra. You have Pat Riley at the front, at the top of this, so you have respect and admiration for the organization. The location is unbeatable. It's not breaking news that NBA players love being and playing in and living in Miami. And then this new added layer for the Heat, this new up-tempo offense, that's something that I think really could be attractive to Giannis. Because if you think about the kinds of players who would thrive in Miami's new system, it's Giannis. Giannis's drives start at half court. Put him in isolation in a full court, up-tempo transition style setting with a team with a good defense that can force those types of opportunities for him. And Giannis the other day after the game said he wants to be the leading scorer in NBA history in like 4 to 5 years. Well, he's going to have to score a lot of points to do that. So it feels like in Miami, you can hit a lot of different check marks, right? You can check a lot of different boxes. You could play in a desired location for a desirable franchise with a history of winning with star players, for a coach with a great track record, future Hall of Famer. After the last few coaches Giannis has had, maybe that's very attractive to him. And in a system that A, maximizes his ability on the court and maximizes their ability to win games, and then B, potentially maximizes the way we talk about Giannis and his legacy, which Giannis has not been shy about talking about. So I think Miami has to be on this list. I think Dallas has to be on the list because he still has a good relationship with Jason Kidd. They have the Anthony Davis asset that they can move potentially. There's maybe something there. And then I think Golden State has to be on the list. Giannis, Steph Curry, they've flirted enough over the years. It's an obvious basketball fit. Players like playing for Golden State. They've kind of become one of those franchise lately. Really hard for them to pull off that deal, but we'll talk about that here in a second. Then there's some dark horse candidates. I think Atlanta, based on where they're at, it feels like they have the assets to potentially go all in for Giannis, and that could get really interesting. I looked at Minnesota. Would Giannis want to play with somebody like Anthony Edwards? That could be interesting. I looked at Detroit. I think there's a lot of stuff that Giannis would like about in Detroit, playing with Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren. Nice young team, guys who could support him. Not a ton of shooting there, but I don't think Giannis necessarily cares about that, or maybe he thinks, okay, well, they can get me and then we can go figure out the shooting later. We can add shooting. Keep Duncan Robinson, maybe we can add some other shooters. And obviously at the top of the Eastern Conference. I also think staying in the Eastern Conference probably should be a priority for Giannis. The other team is San Antonio. They've been thrown around here. I get it. Add Giannis to Victor Wembanyama and you got a title contender. Personally, I am hoping this does not happen. I would hate to see Giannis land in San Antonio. Let Wembanyama have his team. Let him have the Spurs. I want to see what this looks like. I want to see Wembanyama with San Antonio, and I want to see this team. This team's good, by the way. It's young. Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper. I just want to see that grow into something. That, to me, is what's more interesting. And frankly, and I don't like doing the big market, small market thing all the time, but I don't really want to see Giannis in San Antonio. It's not that sexy of a market. It would be really cool to see Giannis in a bigger market that would kind of help him flourish and embrace all this international stuff. And I also kind of just want to see him in the Eastern Conference. If Giannis leaves the East and goes West, the NBA will have a crisis on its hands. Because you would have at least the top 7 players in the league all playing in the Western Conference. And the Eastern Conference would be without any of those superstar type players. Think about it. You would have Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, then Giannis, Victor Wembanyama, Anthony Edwards, Steph Curry, LeBron James, your biggest star still. All these guys are playing in the Western Conference. What would be the point of the Eastern Conference? I want Giannis to stay in the Eastern Conference. That's what I am personally rooting for. That said, I promise you some fake trades. It'll be East teams, it'll be West teams. Let's start with the first one. Like I said, the Knicks are going to be at the top of the list here, right? So how can you get a trade done? You could potentially just do something that is Karl Anthony Towns for Giannis, essentially, as the package. ESPN proposed this one. I think it makes some sense. The Knicks get Giannis and Jericho Sims. The Bucks get Karl Anthony Towns, Pacome Diadiat, and then Tyler Kolek, and 1 first-round pick in 2026. That's top 8 protected coming from the Wizards. And then 3 first-round pick swaps. The Knicks don't have any first-round picks. That's what's going to make this hard. Not just because of where they are against the tax apron, but because they only have 1 tradable first-round pick. So it would be 1 pick, 3 swaps. So I don't know if I'm Milwaukee that's enough for me. If I have enough, I think the other teams on this list potentially could beat that offer. And so then it would be up to Giannis to really force his way to the Knicks. But then again, you look at that and you're like, well, can I flip Towns somewhere else? Like, what do I need? Towns is like 30 years old. What do I need him for? If I'm Milwaukee, I could try to stay competitive, or maybe I can flip Towns to another team. So I came up with this. Same basic trade, right? Same parts moving. And then you flip Towns, if you're the Bucks, in a 3-way deal to Toronto. Toronto sends back Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett to the Bucks. So you get 2 younger perimeter-oriented players that I think maybe are better fits for what Milwaukee's new timeline is. And then 2 more first-round picks from the Raptors, who are getting Karl Anthony Towns in this deal. I like it for Toronto. You put Towns with Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes, spaces the floor a little bit. You get another star there. I think that makes a lot of sense for the kind of things that they want to do. They keep Jakob Poeltl, so you can play Towns and Poeltl together. I think that makes sense for them even defensively. And then for Milwaukee, you get 2 good young players, and then 5 or 6, rather, first-round picks assets with the 3 swaps and then the 3 firsts coming over, 1 from New York and then 2 from Toronto. Still might not be enough to get it done, by the way. But that's the trade I came up with. Next one. We talked about the Miami Heat. The Bucks would probably ask for Bam. The Heat would want to keep Bam out of the deal as much as possible because I think the idea would be, okay, let's put Giannis with Bam. Bam is shooting a bunch of threes this year. I think that makes a lot of sense. We've seen what Giannis could do with an elite rim protector like Brook Lopez. Imagine Giannis with Bam. Imagine what that defense in Miami would be like. I think that would be the vision for the Heat. But then it gets to the point of, well, if you're not including Bam, then you have to basically include two of Tyler Hero, Norm Powell, and Andrew Wiggins. Now, this is where the Terry Rozier stuff comes into play. Rozier's contract right now is frozen while he's away from the team and the NBA figures out what to do with this whole Terry Rozier situation. If they had his $26 million expiring salary, you could easily throw him into that. Milwaukee could just say, hey, go home. Your money comes off the books at the end of the year, and we're not even worrying about it. And we'll just worry about the rest of the stuff in the trade. But right now, the Heat are not allowed to trade Terry Rozier. So my first call, if I'm the Heat, is not to the Milwaukee Bucks or Giannis's representation. It's to the league office to be like, hey, by December 15th, we better have something resolved here on the Terry Rozier thing. Now, the NBA front office is not going to necessarily speed up their investigation just to try to make sure that Miami has a chance of getting Giannis. So I'm just putting the Terry Rozier piece of this over here, and I'm trying to figure out a trade with the rest of what's going on with the roster in Miami. So it has to include two of Hero, Powell, or Wiggins for salary purposes. Let's put Hero and Powell in the mix here. Hero with some Milwaukee roots. Powell, another good scorer. Milwaukee could probably flip him for at least another first-round pick. And then Miami could trade up to 2 first-round picks. So maybe you can throw some swaps in there. So it'd be Hero, Powell, the 2 firsts. And then if I'm Milwaukee and I'm not getting Bam, then I'm asking for Kel'el Ware. And if you're Miami, then you pretty much have to do that. Still not a ton there. I think if you're the Heat, you're losing a lot of perimeter scoring, obviously, without Hero and Powell. You are keeping Jaime Jaquez Jr., who might step into that bigger perimeter scoring role. Davion Mitchell is still there. It's a little worrisome about that perimeter scoring. Maybe you try to put Wiggins in the deal instead of Hero or instead of Powell. But that's sort of the bones of what that trade would look like. Next to the Chicago Bulls. This one was a lot harder. First of all, you need the contracts, and they don't have very desirable big contracts. Zach Collins on expiring is okay. Then Patrick Williams on a 4-year, $18 million deal, $18 million a year deal. That's not great, but it kind of has to be included. I want to keep Vucevic if I'm Chicago because I want Vucevic next to Giannis. And then I'm giving him Kobe White, I'm giving him Matas Buzelis, and I'm giving him 3 first-round picks. So that's why if you're Milwaukee, you're doing it. I get Kobe White, young point guard, kind of like him. We have a need for that on the roster. Buzelis, a bright young player who has all-star potential. And then I'm getting 3 first-round picks unprotected, and then those couple of contracts. So that's the deal with the Chicago Bulls. And then there's the Hawks. Seen a bunch of different Hawks trades thrown out there. If I'm Milwaukee, can I get Trae Young, Zachary Riza-Shea, and at least 1 first-round pick? Probably more. That's at least interesting to me if I'm Milwaukee because I get to start over as a Trae Young team. I get Riza-Shea, and I get at least 1 first-round pick. If I can get that first-round pick from New Orleans, it's actually the Milwaukee and New Orleans swap rights pick. So I'm getting the New Orleans part of that swap rights. That's really interesting to me now, too. I thought about Detroit for Tobias Harris, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, and 2 to 3 first-round picks. That's interesting. I can't figure out a Warriors deal. It either has to include Jimmy Butler, which I don't think Milwaukee would be interested in, and then you're like, okay, we got to flip Jimmy Butler to a 3rd team, and like, what team really wants to be in the Jimmy Butler business? We kind of just saw this play out, and it wasn't awesome. There wasn't a lot of takers. ESPN proposed a deal that included Kuminga, Draymond Green, and Buddy Hield. Okay, if I'm Milwaukee, I don't want Draymond. Can I flip him somewhere? What's his value outside of Golden State? Kuminga's kind of okay. Like I'm not really banging down the door to try to make sure I get Kuminga in a Giannis deal. Okay, thought about Minnesota. It's gonna be tough. It would have to include Julius Randle, McDaniels, Dillingham. They don't really have any picks to move. That one's tough. And then Dallas is tough again, unless the Bucks want Anthony Davis or can reroute him for assets. Does not feel like they can get enough, and Dallas doesn't really have that many great picks. They had the Lakers pick in 2029, but even that's not looking great at this point. So those are the fake trades I came up with. Before we get out of here, though, you're going to see a lot of trade ideas over the next few weeks about Giannis. This conversation is not going away. I do think we should take a moment to just remember Giannis's career in Milwaukee and what he meant to that franchise and what he means to that franchise, because it's not over yet. Grew into an MVP, right? The guy out of the draft that nobody had any film on. You heard rumors and reports and stories that he was playing against a chair in these pre-draft scouting workouts, and ends up getting picked in the middle of the first round. It's him and Jabari Parker as like the two guys in Milwaukee, and it becomes very evident very quickly that Giannis was just better and just had that killer instinct and that growth mindset. He grows into an MVP and a finals MVP and a champion, a consensus top 3 guy in the league every single year. And the Bucks deserve a ton of credit for fostering that, for drafting him and for fostering that. They also deserve a lot of credit for winning a championship, right? Building that roster in 2022. Those were some great moves. They kept Chris Middleton, and he developed into an all-star. They made the trade for Drew Holiday. They built the right roster around him, and they won a championship. They can never take that away. It's one of the great championships and one of the great finals performances we've seen in a very long time by Giannis. They also deserve some blame for how we got here. The Damian Lillard trade did not work. I think it was still probably the right deal, but it didn't work. They get credit for being bold. They get credit for being bold in waiving Damian Lillard to sign Miles Turner. I think that was a calculated move, understanding that, hey, this was probably our Hail Mary, and even though that Damian Lillard contract is going to be a lot of dead money going forward, it's our Hail Mary. And if it works out, great, we keep Giannis, and that's worth the dead money. And if it doesn't work out and we're forced to trade Giannis, then we're rebuilding anyway. We're going to be bad. Who cares about the dead money? So I never thought the dead money was as big of an issue as some people made it out to be. But the reason we got here, and the reason this particular Bucks roster just isn't good enough, it's mostly poor talent evaluation by this front office. Draft pick after draft pick that did not pan out. And I understand it's hard to draft when you're consistently winning 48, 50 games a year, and you're picking in the bottom 10, bottom half of the first round every year. But you got to find guys. You got to find guys. You got to find guys at the end of the first round or in the second round or undrafted. You got to find contributors. And only 2 draft picks since Giannis was drafted have worked out. Malcolm Brogdon, Dante DiVincenzo. And one of the worst moves that this Bucks front office made was trading DiVincenzo to the Kings at the 2022 trade deadline, trading DiVincenzo to the Kings in a 4-team deal that brought back Serge Ibaka, who just did nothing for them right away. So you let DiVincenzo walk away, who's a very good player and became a very good player for Golden State and then the Knicks and now the Timberwolves. You let Grayson Allen get away, who's one of the best three-point shooters by volume and by efficiency in the league. Perfect fit next to a guy like Giannis. You misplayed the Chris Middleton trade last deadline. Trading him for Kuzma was a gross misevaluation of talent. And now Giannis looks around. You fired Mike Budenholzer, where you were probably too early to do that. So now Giannis is looking around that locker room. Drew Holiday's gone. Chris Middleton is gone. The coach that he won a championship with is gone. I don't think he looks around that locker room and feels as much loyalty as he might feel to the fan base and to the city of Milwaukee. I don't think he feels as much loyalty to the people in that locker room as he would have had that core from the championship year in 2022 mostly stayed together. And I think the front office deserves quite a bit of blame for that. And that's how we got here. We'll see how it all works out. But right now, Giannis still with the Milwaukee Bucks. We're awaiting more details on the injury and the MRI that followed that injury. But we are just getting started here with all of the Giannis trade noise. Thanks for tuning in.